What if the only thing, like really holding you back from the life you want, what if it isn't your job or, your circumstances,
Hmm.
but just how you think about it all?
It's a big question, isn't it? Makes you look inwards straight away, and we're so often taught to look outwards for problems and solutions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's right at the heart of what we're exploring today.
Mm-hmm.
We're digging into Brianna Wiest's book, 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think. And if you've seen this book, it's less like something you just read and more like maybe a manual.
Yeah, like a guide to understanding those unconscious beliefs and thought patterns that really shape our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, the architects of our reality, sort of. So our mission here is to pull out the really impactful ideas, give you a shortcut maybe to understanding how your internal world really does create your external world.
Right, a focused path. Let's jump in.
Okay, so this main idea, the book argues pretty strongly that the biggest block isn't usually what's happening out there, but how we perceive it, how we think about it.
Mm-hmm. It puts it really bluntly, doesn't it? Something like, the only problem with your life is the way you think about it.
Wow. Yeah, that's direct.
It is. And it can feel a bit confronting because we instinctively blame things outside ourselves. But the book explains why it makes this claim. It talks about something called naive realism.
Naive realism. Okay, well, what's that exactly? Like just believing what you see.
Pretty much, yeah, but with a catch. It's the assumption, the one we usually don't even question, that we see the world objectively, like perfectly, as it is.
Okay. Like our eyes are just cameras recording reality.
Exactly. But the source says, well, research shows that's just not how it works. Our reality, the one we experience, is heavily filtered. It's shaped by our thoughts, feelings, past experiences, all that internal stuff. It even says parts of it are basically fabricated by our minds.
Fabricated. Wow.
Yeah, it states, there is no way you can ever know an objective reality, and that we can't know how much of our subjective view is, well, made up.
So my mind isn't just a passive receiver. It's actively building my world.
That's the core idea. It flips the script. The book argues your mind creates. It is not created. It's not just shaped by circumstances. It's actively shaping them, or at least how we perceive and react to them.
Which, yeah, that makes sense when you think about facing problems. Like sometimes the actual issue, losing a job, say, isn't as difficult as the mental loop we get stuck in about it.
Focusing on how bad it feels or how unfair it is.
Right. Instead of, thinking about solutions or what to do next.
Exactly. The source nails this. It says something like, perhaps the current problem is not the problem, but that your perception is skewed, or you aren't thinking of solutions as much as you are focusing on your discomfort. We get bogged down in the feeling of the problem.
And there's a really concrete example in there about how beliefs shape experience. Like if you believe you can handle pain, you'll be more resilient. If you believe you're worthy of love,
You'll actually experience it when it shows up.
right.
It's not about wishing things into existence, but about your internal programming. If deep down you think you can't handle loss, you might avoid risks that are necessary for growth.
Or if you don't feel worthy of love, you might sabotage relationships or just not see love when it's there.
Exactly. These beliefs, often unconscious, they really do act like self-fulfilling prophecies. They filter what we let in and how we interpret it. Our internal world isn't just a mirror, it's more like a projector.
The projector idea. Wow. Okay, that leads really well into the next big theme, which is about emotions. Society often tells us, be strong, be effective, put your feelings down.
The Stoic ideal, right? Be like a machine.
Yeah. But the book argues that's actually a recipe for suffering. It says to be effective is to be a machine, and so we suffer.
Trying to operate without acknowledging feelings is, well, denying being human, basically.
Right, and that denial hurts.
So if suppression isn't the goal, what is emotional intelligence, according to this? It's clearly not about just feeling happy all the time. Definitely not. The source gives a really useful definition. It says, emotional intelligence is not how infrequently you feel anything bad. It's more about the capacity for awareness, processing, dismantling, and adjusting one's experience.
Okay, so it's not what you feel, but how you engage with it.
Exactly. It's about the skill in handling the feelings you do have. The source says emotionally intelligent people, they let themselves be fully human. They feel the whole spectrum.
That feels much more achievable and healthier. So it's about listening to the feeling, not just trying to squash it.
Precisely. The source really emphasizes that emotions are signals. They're communication from you to you. Trying to force yourself to feel differently is pointless.
Like trying to change a road sign instead of changing your direction.
That's the analogy it uses, yeah.
Yeah.
Like finding a road sign and getting out to try to turn the sign, rather than your course of action. The sign isn't the problem, it's information.
So the key is listening, understanding what the emotion is trying to tell you about.
Yeah.
I don't know, your needs, your boundaries.
Exactly. They're how you communicate with yourself. What's the underlying message here?
And another key skill the source points out is not doing that thing. What did it call it?
Yeah.
Extrapolation.
Yes, avoiding extrapolation. This is huge. Emotionally intelligent people don't confuse a bad feeling for a bad life.
Oh, right. Feeling sad today doesn't mean your whole life is sad.
Exactly. They don't project a temporary feeling onto everything. They see it as a passing, transitory experience, not the whole picture.
We all do that sometimes, though.
Yeah.
Have a bad interaction and think, this whole day is ruined.
Mm-hmm. And the source argues that ignoring these signals or trying to force happiness when you're not feeling it, that's what creates more suffering. Real peace comes from just allowing, without judgment, letting the feeling be there, acknowledging it, listening.
Not fighting it, working with it.
That's the shift, a really profound one.
Okay, let's pivot to something else we're really good at avoiding. Discomfort. We chase comfort thinking it equals happiness, but the source, turns that on its head.
Yeah, this part is really interesting and, again, a bit counterintuitive. It suggests our brain's operating system here is pretty basic. It doesn't really think in terms of good or bad like we might consciously. It thinks more in terms of comfortable and uncomfortable.
Just those two. Comfortable and uncomfortable.
Fundamentally, yeah. And that's why, the source argues, we sometimes cling to things that are actually uncomfortable but familiar, like that job you hate, or a relationship pattern that isn't working.
Because it's known.
Yeah.
Even if it's bad.
Exactly. It's comfortable because it's known. The source says nobody holds on to something unless they think it does something for them. Usually keeps them safe. The known discomfort feels safer than stepping into the unknown, even if the unknown might be better.
So the comfort zone isn't always pleasant. It's just predictable.
Precisely. And the argument is that real growth, resilience, even a greater capacity for happiness happens outside that zone by learning to tolerate, even embrace discomfort.
How does that work? Why embrace discomfort?
Because, as the source puts it, stepping outside them serves a crucial purpose. It makes people comfortable with discomfort, which is the gateway to expanding their tolerance for happiness. It's not about enjoying the struggle itself, but what you learn and who you become by going through it. That's more important than how you temporarily feel.
So it builds capacity. It stretches you.
Right. But we have this strong tendency, don't we, to stick with what we know, even if it's not great, rather than face the vulnerability of something new.
Definitely. The known devil, right?
Most prefer the comfort of what they've known to the vulnerability of what they don't, even when what they don't is objectively much better.
And if you really look at your life, how much is structured just to avoid pain? Avoiding difficult conversations, avoiding risks.
And that avoidance actually limits us.
The source suggests it does. It keeps us away from the things that matter, that bring us joy and purpose and meaning for that much longer. We build walls to keep out pain, but we end up walling ourselves in.
So what's the practice then? Just grit your teeth when things get hard? It's more intentional than that. The source talks about healthy discomfort, learning to lean into your stress, not resist it. It's not about seeking pain, but about developing the muscle to handle the necessary discomfort that comes with growth and living fully.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, let's get into maybe the most mind-bending idea from the material, this concept that every relationship you have is with yourself.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, that one takes a minute to unpack. It's a really deep perspective shift. Essentially, it's saying our relationships with other people act like mirrors, reflecting our own internal relationship back at us.
Oh, so?
Well, think about how often we look to others for things we feel we're missing. Like, we want someone else to give us love or validation or make us feel secure.
Like looking for someone to complete you, that old idea.
Exactly. But the source argues that looking outside like that can actually prevent us from truly getting those things. If you believe, maybe unconsciously, that someone else has to give you love for you to have it, you might not recognize it or receive it fully.
Because your focus is always external, on what they're giving or not giving.
Right. If you go on living as though other people are required to give you love, you will never actually experience it, because the real source ultimately needs to be internal. What you're seeking in someone else is what you aren't giving to yourself.
This links back to that perception idea again, doesn't it?
Absolutely. How we see other people isn't just about them. It's heavily filtered through our own stuff, what triggers us, what we admire, what we judge. It often says more about us.
Oof. The source is pretty direct about the negative side, too, isn't it? Like what you dislike most in others.
It's often something true of you. You just haven't been able to acknowledge it yet. Or even stronger, you hate in others what you cannot see in yourself.
That's a challenging thought. Requires some real honesty.
It really does. But the positive side is also true. What you love most about others is what you love most about yourself. The qualities you admire in them often reflect your own potential or actual strengths, maybe ones you haven't fully owned.
Okay, so how does this play out practically? The source gave an example about judging someone.
You're right. Yeah, a really good one. Instead of just stating an opinion as fact, like, he's a prick, which, confuses your feeling about him with an objective truth about his entire being.
Right.
An emotionally intelligent approach, the source suggests, is different. You don't claim your opinion of someone for being a fact about them. Instead, you own your experience.
So you'd say.
Something like, I had a negative experience with him where I felt very uncomfortable. See the shift. It's about your experience, your feeling, not a definitive label on the other person.
Yeah, that totally changes the energy. It's less about blame and more about personal reaction.
Exactly. It's taking responsibility for your perception. And then the source clarifies this whole loving yourself idea. It's not just like a vague, warm feeling.
It's an action.
Yeah. Loving yourself is an action, not a feeling. And it looks like practical things. Standing up for yourself, having the courage to keep going, finding happiness despite the impermanence. It's about doing the things for yourself, respect, kindness, courage that you might otherwise wish someone else would do for you.
Giving yourself what you need. Okay, so if we pull all these threads together, our thinking creates our reality, emotions are signals, discomfort is a doorway to growth, relationships are mirrors. It all seems to point inward, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To the power of internal transformation.
Absolutely. That's the core message running through all these ideas. Changing your external life fundamentally starts with changing your internal world. And importantly, this isn't just about understanding it intellectually.
Right, it takes effort. Conscious choice.
Yeah, you have to actively work against old programming. The source says the point of experiencing anything is learning how to think about it differently. When you do not do the work of learning to think differently, you become stuck.
Stuck. That word really hits home. It feels like the default state if we're not doing this internal work.
It often is. We keep facing the same problems because we keep bringing the same mindset to them.
So for anyone listening who wants to start this work, the source has those reflection questions, particularly the ones linking others to ourselves.
Yes, those are really powerful. Basically asking you to list what bothers you most about other people and what you love most in other people.
And then turn it around. What bothers you most about yourself? What do you love most about yourself?
And the key instruction, dig until you see the correlation.
Why is seeing that correlation so important?
Because it shines a light on your own blind spots, your unhealed parts, or maybe strengths you haven't acknowledged. It helps you see your own projections clearly. It's a direct path to self-awareness.
Taking ownership. And that leads to that really powerful summarizing quote from the source.
Yeah. Everything I perceive is a projection of who I am. If I want to change my life, I change myself.
Simple, but huge.
Okay.
Puts the power right back in your hands.
Completely. It's all about shifting that internal perspective.
So this whole exploration of Brianna Wiest's ideas really highlights that the path forward isn't necessarily about changing what's out there, but changing how we relate to it from in here.
And maybe a final thought to leave people with, also from the source. You are not your thoughts. You are not your feelings. You are the being that observes.
If that's true, if you're the awareness behind the thoughts and feelings, not the thoughts and feelings themselves, what does that really mean about who you are, about your potential beyond those fleeting mental states?
Definitely something worth reflecting on. What reality are you creating today?
Indeed. Lots to think about.